All right, good evening. Welcome to our second Public Safety Forum here in Springfield Township. The general purpose of our Public Safety Forum is to provide a regularly occurring public opportunity to share information between the public and the police department with an ongoing goal of enhancing trust, transparency, and collaboration between the police department and the community. The Springfield Township Commissioners wish to invite and encourage community engagement to improve and support health, safety, and welfare of the community members and of the members of our police department. There are three primary objectives for this evening and for the forum in general: to highlight the work of the highlight the work of the police department and its critical function in preserving the public health, safety, and welfare of Springfield Township; to promote a positive relationship between the police department and community members by enhancing the public's knowledge and understanding of law enforcement roles and responsibilities; and to encourage increased comfort and confidence among community members to make reports and to otherwise engage with our police department. There are two upcoming forums left in 2026. One will be on September 17th. The theme will be preventing vehicle theft and theft from vehicles. And then again on December 17th, where the focus will be crimes against the elderly and care-dependent individuals, including common scams. In terms of the agenda for this evening, we're going to have a presentation on our highlighted topic, which is traffic laws, speed education, and enforcement, which we know we hear a lot about in our meetings. That'll be followed by a Q&A that's specific to the topic. We'll then open up the floor to Q&A and public comment regarding any topic relevant to public safety. We are going to plan for about an hour or so with a hard stop at 90 minutes to honor people's time commitments. But certainly folks are welcome to stay after if they have questions or want to speak with anybody here. And I realized that I started without introducing myself. My name is Beth McNamara. I'm the Ward 1 Commissioner. And I'm so happy that y'all are here. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Officer Gross and we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Officer Gross with our Traffic Safety Unit. My partner, Patrick Johnson, is also here, Chief and Lieutenant as well. Our Sergeant couldn't be here tonight because he is deployed with MERT down in the city due to the soccer event. But he entrusted us with this nice presentation, so hopefully I can get through it, and afterwards you guys can ask any questions. We're going to go over basic stuff that we handle in the Traffic Safety Unit. We are not every day, even though we answer calls for service every day, we're more concerned about speeding in our township, school zones, parking complaints, abandoned autos, and those types of matters are what our unit handles. So when the commissioners get all those complaints, they usually get filtered down to Mike Taylor, down to the chief, and then down to us, and we go out and we address them. So I put together a little PowerPoint presentation that goes over some of that stuff. A lot of the stuff in here is found on our township webpage. So you can get all this information there as well. And then I have some handouts here as well too. So we'll get started with the PowerPoint. All right, so parking. This comes up a lot, and a lot of people don't know this, but your vehicle does have to move every 72 hours. It cannot stay in one spot longer than 72 hours. It also has to have a valid registration and inspection on it to sit on our streets here in Springfield Township. So a lot of the times people will call and say, hey, that car hasn't moved in a month, and we'll come out, we'll check on it. That doesn't mean it gets a parking ticket right that moment. It also doesn't mean it gets towed right that moment. So if a vehicle has been there for a while, we come out, we run the registration, we check on it, we try to find a contact in our system and call the person and see what's going on. Maybe it broke down, maybe they're on vacation. We do ask our residents when they go on vacation to move the vehicles into the driveways of their homes if they have them. If not, give us a heads up that it's going to be on the street. Then after that, we give it 72 hours to move. So let's just say you had a car in front of your house for 3 days. You call us, we go out, we check it, try to reach somebody. If we can't reach anybody, we check it again in 72 hours. Then it gets a parking ticket, which I believe is in the next slide. It might be hard to see, which it is, but I can hand this one around the room if you guys would like to look at it. So there's multiple things that a parking ticket can be issued for here in the township. It's a $25 fee for personal vehicles. And recently the commissioners had changed the commercial vehicles. I'm sorry, did I say 25 for commercial? Residential, regular cars, 25, 50 for commercial. So the commercial vehicles where we mainly have a problem with that is up on Ivy Hill Road, which the roadway is not ours, just the fog line over. So where they park. That's our part of the township. So they can get a $50 fine for parking their tractor trailers, anything that's 26 length in feet. There's also parking violations for your neighborhoods, which are where signs are posted, double parking, less than 15 feet from the intersection, parking on the sidewalk. Now, personally, if I come to your house and your car is up on your sidewalk, I tend not to give you a ticket for it. I just kind of knock on your door and say, can you move it off the sidewalk? As long as it's not blocking the sidewalk, we really try to be fair about it, because sometimes people like to park up on the sidewalk so the mirror doesn't get hit, so on and so forth. These can also be used in the snow emergencies when vehicles are asked to remove off the roadway. They will get a ticket and then be towed because our plow trucks have to get up and down. We also deal with abandoned autos, as I was saying. It doesn't just happen right away. The abandoned auto process is a little bit longer. After you make the phone call to us and we go out, we check it, we give it 72 hours, we still can't find it, then a parking ticket is issued. Then comes the abandoned auto process, which is usually a 7-day process. We have to file paperwork with the state. We have to send 2 letters, a certified and regular mail letter that goes out to the owner at the last registered address. If they don't answer those letters or they get returned, the vehicle can be towed within 7 days. And usually it gets marked with an abandoned auto flyer. You'll know that that car was marked. When I get calls on these, I like to call the caller back. So a lot of people will call in and say, I don't want to give my information, because they feel like they're telling on their neighbors. But it's good because then I can explain this process to them, because people think we're just going to come out and tow it right off the street. There's legality to it, and we can't just take your car off the street, which is a good thing. Cars that are in driveways do not fall on the police department. So if your neighbor has an old jalopy they're working on and they're just leaving it in the driveway, that becomes a code problem. So Pat DePaul, our fire marshal, he handles that. We just dealt with one today. He checks the registration, kind of does the same process, but sends a different type of letter to them. So not always is an abandoned auto fall on the police, because once the person moves it off the roadway, then there's another process too. This is going to get into our mini bikes and electric scooters and whatnot. I have 4 children. I have yet to buy any of this stuff for them. I don't find it safe. I don't find it, they're scary, but we do have a lot of it here in the township. I have made multiple stops, contacted parents, sent them home with their stuff. They had made the parents come pick them up. I have some handouts here. Pat, do you mind just let me know that? This is a PA micromobility sheet that shows you what's allowed. And basically a lot of the electric scooters and electric bikes, they're just not allowed. But everybody has it, right? Because we're just living in that world where everybody has the hot new thing, and this is what they are. So with the scooters, when I see the kids, and Chief, don't hold this against me, but I'll ask them to get up on the sidewalk, make sure they're wearing a helmet. I don't want to see them in the street. You know what I mean? Because that's where they're going to get hurt. They can ride on the sidewalk, I feel. The scooters are really only allowed on private property. You can't even ride your scooter from your house down to your friend's house. You're not supposed to. But these kids are going to do it, so it's hard to stop everyone and, you know, send them on their way. The mini bikes are a little different. When we had those, which I believe that's calmed down a lot, we were confiscating those, calling parents, and issuing citations. A lot of this stuff you need a license for. So the electric scooters, again, are only allowed on private property, but e-bikes, you have to have a license, you have to have a helmet, you have to have the lights, turn signals, and it can only be over, was it 100 cc's or something like that? 50 cc's. So again, it's hard to stop everybody and say, what's your bike? You know, what are we doing? My goal as a traffic safety officer is to make sure they're safe. So if they're riding on a sidewalk, they're using their helmet, and they're paying attention to all the other laws, I don't have that much of a problem with letting them go with a warning, you know, just being safe, letting their parents know. So we do get a lot of calls about these, but the mini bike issue has calmed down a lot. We have not had many calls about that. I know we do field a lot of calls for kids riding carelessly in the street on regular bicycles. Again, the officers respond to the area when this is happening and try to educate as well. So here's that sheet. Again, it depends on where we want to go as a township and as folks, like, do we really want to be ripping these kids off of these things and sending them home with their parents every night? Not 100%. If they're doing the right thing, then I don't see that big of a problem with it, but it is still illegal. That's what it comes down to. And then our favorite topic of all is speed humps. I've been with the department for 10 years, and I've heard this word more than I've heard any other word in police work. There's a lot of things that go with these. One, PennDOT has the end all be all say of this. You can't just put these in the roadway. You have to get their permission. There has to be crash data. So a lot of folks that call in, like, let's use Weiss Avenue for an example. It's a kind of a cut through, but there's no crash data. There's never been a fatal crash. Maybe somebody bumped into somebody's car backing out of the driveway, but no real crash data. So it doesn't warrant these speed humps. The chief did a study with Corporal Gross, who's retired, back in 2018, where there's other traffic calming things we can do. You could allow parking on both sides, which makes the street narrow. People would have to cut in and out of cars. It slows down things, but a lot of people don't want to do that either, because then the street becomes too tight and kids start running out between cars. So again, what we do, we go out and we enforce it. Right now, me and Pat have been on East Mill Road for the last week and a half, I believe, enforcing speed and truck regulations there. So when the calls come in, we do go answer them, and we issue, we try to give like a week of warnings, and then we start issuing citations. And 9 out of 10 times, the person we're stopping lives right around the corner. And they're one that called. I had one this morning. She's doing 44. I stopped her and she said, I signed that sheet to get you out here. So 2 kids in the back seat running late to school. I've been there. I'm sure you've all been there as well. So we get it. We understand it, but we are trying to enforce it and give breaks where we can, because we don't want to just become known as that police department that, as we call it, hammer everybody that drives down the road. Some more things with these, the speed humps. They can be ineffective for many reasons. The main reason is the yo-yo effect. And what that is when you come up on a speed hump, there's 2 things that can happen. You're going to slow down for it, or you're going to speed up. So if you slow down for it and you get over it slowly, you then accelerate faster to the next set. So what we do is we cause a calming effect, but then a speeding effect on top of it. We saw it with our installation of the stop sign down at Edan Road. People came to a stop. We're all used to it now. Took me a while to get used to it. Many nights of going down that street, not stopping there, but now we're used to it. But you stop and then you're like, oh, I got to make up that time. It's not that you're trying to, it's just in your head. Like, now I just slowed down. So now I got to speed up. So we saw an increase of speeds from Edan to Church. Not egregious speeds, but somebody that was doing a constant 30 through there now is doing 35 to make up for that extra time. And mind you, again, the speed limit is 25, but you can technically go up to 10 miles over the speed limit before you can be stopped. So that's another thing with perception as well. People think the person's speeding, but they're really only doing 35, which is allowed on that roadway. On a 25-mile-an-hour roadway, you can do 35, which seems like a lot. If we were going down your street doing 35, like coming around the park, looks pretty egregious, but it's legal. No, so I think that skip that one. Oh. This is the other thing that it can look like after they're not taken care of. Because the plastic ones, again, they have to be approved by PennDOT and all that, but when our plow trucks come down, when emergency vehicles come down, this is what we can be left with. And then the nails in the street, you get flat tires. There's a lot to that. I was just telling the chief and Mike Taylor that the other day I went up to Ivy Hill Road, which they have installed speed humps, which was the city. I got an emergency call for a crash with injuries on Pennsylvania Ave. I took off on Ivy Hill Road, forgetting that the speed humps were there in an emergency lights and sirens. And when I hit the thing, everything in my car went. So over time, hitting these things cause damage. Many of you in the township, if you go out Hillcrest, the set of there, how many times have you seen them broken apart? How many times have people swerve off to the side to miss them? My personal opinion on speed humps is we cause more damage with them than we do without them. There's plenty of other traffic calming things we can do to fix a speeding problem, if there is one. We also, in our department, we're in charge of doing speed studies. Recently, we're doing one right now on Pennsylvania Ave, and we recently did one on Burton Road, where I believe it was a perception problem. The gentleman was outside of his house, cars were driving by, coming home from work, and his kids are playing right next to the curb because there's no sidewalk there, so they're right on the curb. He thought everybody was speeding. The top speed we had in that neighborhood was 32 miles an hour for a week of, watching the cars. Over 1,000 cars passed the county. So a lot of it's perception, and I'm always available to come out and show you our speed techniques and how we judge speed and time it. You ever see the white lines in the roadway? That's our counter. So this is called aerobic, and that's how we're allowed to time speed here in PA. We can't use radar. State police can, but we cannot. So when you enter that first set of white lines with your front tire or rear tire, I click start. And then when you come out the second end, I click end. And what it does, it gives me the speed. It also gives me the seconds you were traveling. So on like a 35 mile, like the lady this morning I was talking about that I stopped, she was doing 44 and it took her 2.47 seconds to get through those white lines. Now this is all certified. We have these checked and balanced. And then we also have permits and regulations for the roadways. So it's not like we can just come out to any street and set this up. We have to go through a lot of hoops ourselves to be able to help out with the speed. But we also use another system called NRAD, which is a laser beam that shoots across the roadway. And once you pass through it, it sends a signal to our computer and we can tell. It's in a way like radar, but it's not direct radar. And we use that a lot in tighter areas up in Winmore and streets like that. Our main parking complaints have been Trademore and Willow Grove Ave, which we have been addressing with. I've been in touch with softball and soccer folks, and we're trying to work all that out. So we are very well aware of all your complaints and trying to address them as best we can. But it does take us some time. We have two people up on Trademore that call me as soon as the box truck pulls up to Captain Andy's. And we go up and we tell them, I try to be fair, but if it's the same box truck over and over again, we'll give them a citation, blocking the roadway. So that was quick and short. But if the folks here tonight have any questions or concern, you can reach our traffic office at that email right there. And it comes to all three officers, and I believe, are you copied on as well? So there is a fail-safe problem. If one of us misses it, somebody would get it. And, I'd like to call you back and try to meet with you again, like come out, show you this. So besides that, Pat, you have anything?
We're here to, like I said, like Officer Gross said, we're here to ensure that the roadways are safe, and we're more than happy to respond to any complaints or concerns that any residents have, and we try our best to keep everybody safe in the township, and we're happy to do so. There's two slides that I think you need.
Did I skip over?
One's up there.
Oh, Paul Miller's law. Sorry, totally forgot about that. Is anybody familiar with this law? Okay, few of us are, right? So what this law stated was there's no more cell phones in hands. We used to pull up a red light, be able to use it at a red light. We're not allowed to do that anymore. So actually I wrote my first citation for it this morning. We gave warnings out for a year from June 5th of 25 to June 5th of 26. I still gave out a few warnings last week because there's still people that aren't educated on it. So it's a $50 fine if you're driving around with your cell phone at all. And everything has to be hands-free now. The GPS, you can't even have it up here and talking and drive. Like it's just it's not supposed to be in your hand at all. A lot of our cars now have the technology to respond with a text message, I'm driving. I suggest maybe trying to turn that on if you can, it will help. I go to my kids to do all my electronic stuff now because I'm out of touch with electronics. Was it just that one, Craig, or was there another one?
One thing about the Paul Miller to keep in mind is there is an exception that if, God forbid, you're in an accident or you see a crime occurring, you can dial 911 while you're in the vehicle.
Yeah, got it. I'm not touching this thing anymore. One thing I did skip over that, me and Pat, and also Chief back in his day, were crash reconstructions. What that means is we can take a skid mark off the ground and tell you how fast your car was going and which way you were headed. And we put crashes back together when we have a little bit of data that's left from crashing. Me and Pat are on the crash team for Monco, which means on the eastern side, if there's a fatal crash, we're called out to go investigate it. So kind of gives us a little more qualification to handle all these traffic issues that we have. And knowing, I'll tell you the one reason I did it was I feel like it gives people closure, because when you lose someone in a crash, you kind of want to know what happened. That happened to me personally before I became a cop. And here I am today where I can put all that back together and talk to a family and tell them this is what happened. As Pat mentioned with the cell phones, we're getting a lot of crash notifications now. So if you're running late with your kids to school and you leave your cell phone on top of the car and you pull out of the driveway, usually it calls us because it's dumped on Stenton Ave and got ran over. So we get a crash notification to go out. So the technology today is great. So if you're in your car and you happen to get into a crash, it will automatically, usually Apple, I don't know about Androids. Apple does alert the police to a crash notification and give us a roundabout area. And 9 out of 10 times we'll get a crash notification, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, we get a passerby saying, hey, there's a bad crash at, this location. So, but, yeah, I'm happy to field any questions, always available.
On the cell phones.
Should we use the?
Bill,
I'm gonna-
yeah, maybe pass them around.
I'll just walk the mic around.
On the cell phones, I assume that it's okay if I get a call or I need to make a call for me to pull over to the curb and conduct my business.
Absolutely. And some of us are finding that too, because when we see a car pulled over on the side of the road, we tend to stop and see what's going on. And I'll stop and it will be like an Uber driver saying, hey, just looking for my next fare.
Okay.
So totally allowed to just try to make sure that you're safe, you're visible. Like, you don't want to pull over in the middle of Paper Mill Road to make the call. Try to pull off to a side street, put your hazards on, be visible that you're, making a phone call or something.
Okay. A second question I have is concerns turning right on red. I know some intersections are that, what would you call it, dual controlled, say, Stenton and Paper Mill, when you're coming up from the Mount. There are 2 sets of traffic lights there for me. You can go straight on Paper Mill to come down here, or that can be red, but there's also a light for me, a legal right-hand turn. I do see people though, when that light is red, still turning on red. Is that legal?
No, that's a note that when the arrow is red, you're not supposed to be turning. The other thing about that intersection that a lot of people don't know is that's not our intersection. That is Philadelphia's intersection. Technically, we still are allowed to enforce it. It's hard to enforce due to the way it's set up. There's no real good spot to sit. But I've pulled multiple people over while sitting behind them going on to that. But if that arrow is red, that's a typical red light. You're not supposed to turn. And I believe there is a no turn on red sign there.
Well, that's what I thought, but
Yeah.
I've had arguments with people. I won't make the turn, but others say, in Pennsylvania, right turn on red.
No, not with this sign. And the reason that is because you have a green arrow coming off the Paper Mill onto Stenton. That's why that goes red. Because they try to go at the same time. Again, plenty of crashes there where people think it's ours, but it's Philadelphia.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing. I just wanted to clarify that people argue with me.
Oh, yeah, nope. You can tell them you talk to the police and they're not allowed to turn.
And then.
And if the arrow is red, the arrow is red, it's a stop. You cannot turn on. It's posted no turn on red, and if it's red, but yeah, so when you pull up, if there's green arrow, you can go, because that means the other side's arrow is not green. The one coming off, if you're going up Paper Mill, turning left on the Stenton, that has a green turn arrow. That's why the other side will be red. So you don't get into an accident pulling out at the same time.
While we're talking about specific intersections, I wonder, what are the top intersections or speedways that you find yourself dealing with in town?
Regarding collisions or speed.
Or any challenges? I mean, what are the ones that you find yourself always having specific challenges, and whatever the challenge is?
Church Road and Station Road, Station is a little tricky because there's a lot of traffic going through there and there's no traffic control devices.
Our major
But I
cut
was talking
throughs,
about the Philadelphia intersection of Paper Mill and Stenton, which belongs to Philadelphia, but 99% of the time, we're the ones responding.
You got to
that.
speak to the mic. Sorry, Pat.
Okay. Next question, I'll do.
Halls in church, is that on the list too?
not, it's funny, a lot of people do complain about Halls and Church and how they, for years, wanted a stoplight there, and we still, again, there is no fatal crash data there. There's one gentleman who lives on the corner, and I've spoken to him many of times. I'm sure the chief has too, and everybody else who's been in his department, but the data is not there. People know it's a tricky intersection. We've had some crashes, but nothing, serious, thankfully. There's nothing really to enforce there. That's the thing. There's no speeding issue. People are turning and making the turns all day, every day. I mean, think about how many cars go through there. I'm sure you could probably go through there, 3-4 times a day? I go through at least 25. So it's tough, but the data's not there for that one.
As a follow-up to that, I had on my notes here, what do you say to those who say, I don't want to wait for crash data to exist. I don't want something to happen before we do an intervention. And what is your take on that? And how do you balance that with, of course, what you need to do professionally?
So I do take that into consideration because, again, like I've mentioned, I'm a parent, right? I don't want to see that fatal crash before I have to do something. However, sometimes our hands are tied, as working with the commissioners, that there's things PennDOT require for that. So the only thing we can say to that is we monitor that and we do our speed studies and which we have there. I'm just using that intersection as an example. And we look at it and say, okay, we've spent 8-9 man hours out here in a week and we haven't had any issues. Let's come back to it next week. And we continue to do that until we have to move on to the next problem. Which, a lot of the times they pop up all over the place. Like Pat mentioned, Sandy Hill and Church. PennDOT's supposed to be improving that intersection with some new signage, and we have to get that one neighbor to push some trees back. So there's a lot you can do before that data comes. But we hope that we never see that data, and we don't like to say we want that data to do what you want, but it's needed by law for them to give us the grants and the money to redesign those intersections. So all we can do is just enforce it the best we can.
Yeah, at the commissioner level, we've talked about the intersection a lot too, not just from a safety standpoint, but just the connectivity and walkability. Those two neighborhoods that are kind of disconnected there. There's not an easy solution, right? And if anything you did there to slow traffic, you would cause backups to the light in one direction or the other way, and traffic does through Church there. That's a tough one. The Paul Miller law, if someone has a phone mount, is that allowed if they're like as a GPS?
So you can set your GPS prior to leaving your travel, but if you're driving down the road and it's mounted and you're doing this, I'm going to assume you're texting.
Okay.
Because most GPSs don't allow you to change anything within them while it's moving. So I know in my car, I have to stop before it will let me add in another address or stop. Same with the Uber drivers. Uber drivers now doing DoorDash and everything, they have 3 phones and they're looking at different ones because they're picking up for this one, they're dropping off for that, and they can't touch any of that stuff until they pull over and physically stop their car.
Right. My other question is maybe you could speak to, there's a perception, it's been around forever, about ticketing and police departments have quotas or use it as a way to raise money. Can you speak to that myth?
Oh, 100% we have a quota and that's how we make all our money. No, it's not. So what I always tell folks is, I was told many, many years ago, the dollar figure that comes back to the township is very low. It's something along the lines of like $6 or $7. And I explain to people when I print out a ticket and I give it to them, I show them all the other fees that are involved. And one of them's EMS. And people go, EMS, they didn't come out here. But I said, but you're helping fund them by speeding in our neighborhood. But that's where the costs go, so I always say to them, there's no such thing as quotas. We legally cannot say we have to stop this many cars per month. We stop what we see as violations and we continue to do that. So that's kind of how I kill that myth right there. And they go, oh, the township only gets $7. What do you mean? Yeah, the county gets the most of it. So that kind of ends that conversation right there for me.
Do you have another one?
Oh, I have more.
Officer, I'm Thad Kirk. I'm the new commissioner for Ward 6. I just want to thank you and the force for doing this. These are great opportunities, and this is a very relevant topic for I think everybody. And I want to commend you guys for your efforts in this area and recognize, like we've already been talking about, how a lot of your hands are tied with state law and PennDOT and things like that. One thing I just was hoping you could speak to a little bit more for those of us or those who may be on Zoom that aren't familiar with it. Could you explain when you say a speed study or a traffic study? Could you explain what that means and what that entails? What goes into that?
Yeah. So I couldn't bring it here tonight because it's actually out on Pennsylvania Ave. It's basically a little black box that hangs up on the telephone pole. We chain it so nobody steals it because that's what would happen if we didn't. And it collects the data as the vehicles are driving by. So we leave it out there for a week. The most recent one I think I actually done, I said Burton Road, but was Cromwell for LaSalle traffic back and forth. We left it out there for a week that LaSalle was out of school. And we left it out there for a week that LaSalle was in school to see the differences. And what it does is it's a radar detection type. When a vehicle drives by, it will tell its speed, how many cars are going down, it counts them, and then it prints us all a paper with enforceable range. So basically what that means is if there is a speeding problem, it will tell us that there's 80% enforceable range. But most of our studies come back where there's only about a 13 to 15% enforceable range, meaning that 13 to 15% of vehicles are actually speeding out of that 100%. And it gives all kinds of nice graphs. I was looking for one before we came over, but I couldn't find one for us to show. So more than happy to share one of those with you, which I'm sure they've been shared, right? Yeah. So you've seen them actually. Okay. But more than happy to show you our most recent ones. We can't share with the public.
No, I mean, our office.
Yeah, I guess we could, right? Okay. Sorry, these are questions for those types of things. Because again, those are things like if we start giving out the speed studies to all the neighbors, they're going to be like, well, why aren't you enforcing the 12%? But that's what we are enforcing. That's who are getting tickets. Poor LaSalle kids, the last week of school got a lot of tickets to go along with their graduation. But, and I've asked nicely, hey, please don't cut through here. But legally we can't make them stop cutting through a side street, but we can enforce the speed. So.
I'll come back.
Sorry, I hate using the microphone. So I'm Leah with Rep Nelson's office. So we get a lot of calls in our office about, we need this done, want this done. But so I just want to say thank you to the officers and your office. But a lot of, stop signs and traffic studies, they actually have to be asked by the township first before it can go to PennDOT. And so we didn't even know about the traffic study on Cromwell. So that's awesome that you guys.
Internal thing, we're
Yeah.
trying to address the neighbors and try to keep it out of your office if we can handle it at our level.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
So I just want all of you to know and anyone who's on Zoom. So it actually needs to go to the township or to the police before it comes to us or before it goes to PennDOT. And that's all I wanted to say. And any question that I have will go to you guys after.
You mentioned earlier that in Pennsylvania, state troopers can use radar, but municipalities cannot. We get questions about that all the time in terms of why. Could you offer some clarification there for folks listening?
The chief would know that answer better than I would, I
May I?
believe. Sorry. Throw you under the bus there.
No, but at this point in my career, I've almost given up on getting the legislation to make radar available for local municipal policing. As we talked about earlier, the state police, we're the only state that only allows the state police to use radar, which up on 309 Expressway, it's they can enforce for 6 miles over the speed limit. So I'm on a legislative committee for our Modco Chiefs Association, so I'm always scouring, looking for when is a possibility they're going to update the law, and we don't see it. You have something, Leah?
I believe they just did that on Roosevelt Boulevard, and I forget, on Broad Street. Also, Broad Street now has speed cameras as well. And there's been a huge uproar on that because they just installed those, and a lot of people got tickets that they didn't realize they got, and multiple tickets that they just didn't realize that they got because they did a test on Roosevelt Boulevard and they saw that improved safety and crashes went down. There was a huge study done about that. So they installed them on Broad Street to see the studies about that. And there may be legislation out there soon to see what's going to come of those radar cameras and all of that. So Chief, you may get your wish.
Yeah, Roosevelt Boulevard is by and large one of the most dangerous roads in the Commonwealth. And what I was referring to was the handheld radar, like the state police. Another restriction for the state police is that they're the only state that when they're using radar up on 309 or other interstates, they have to be stationary. Whereas you, no doubt, have been down to the shore, New Jersey or Delaware, where they are allowed to use radar on the move as they're clocking vehicles with radar. So, yeah, we're hopeful that they at some point will give us that ability to have it in our state as well. I just wanted to touch one quickly on the e-scooters. So, in our township, we revised the ordinance back in 2023 to specifically address some of these other vehicles out there, ATVs, e-scooters. So there's something that is proposed now called Abby's Law, and it's named after a gal, poor 12-year-old girl, Abigail Gillen from Aston, which is in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It's stuck right now in the Senate Transportation Committee, but we're hoping that it gets passed. She was riding on an e-scooter with another young girl, and unfortunately she fell off the scooter and was hit by a car and tragically killed. So the new law, which will give us a little more enforcement through the vehicle code instead of a township ordinance, if you're under 16 years of age, you won't be able to ride an e-scooter on the street, sidewalks, things like that. Helmets are required for 16 and 17-year-olds, right? The scooter won't be able to go more than 20 miles per hour. And you can only have one rider on the e-scooter. So this law is, hopefully it passes, but right now it's hung up in the committee. So we'll see how that goes. Yes, sir.
Does that mean that there's no ability to enforce anything?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so you're powerless to enforce or?
We're using our township ordinance
Okay,
that we adopted.
commissions adopt that. So, which but actually also includes the possibility, it's right written in there, we can, theoretically, we could seize the vehicle or the e-scooter. Now, we don't really want to have to get involved with that, but I would encourage you officers to, given the circumstance, perhaps call a parent and let them know that little Johnny is, whatever, at Church Road and 309, riding dangerously on a scooter, and the parents will maybe come down to the location, pick up their son or daughter. But so no, we can still enforce under that.
Yeah, at this point, it seems like it's just happenstance if someone gets caught. I called in, I've actually corresponded with you, and today did what you suggested, which was to call 911 because I had a contractor who was coming to my house, and there was someone on a small motorcycle and underage, all that, had gone around the turn and almost got run over by him. So it's really concerning. I mean, it's, to me, just a matter of time before somebody gets seriously injured. So.
And did you call 911?
I did, yeah.
And
they said they would, I'm presuming, contact Springfield Township Police and send someone there. So.
Right. And I was in meetings most of the day. Do you know, we got to receive the call. Where was the location?
Erdenheim Road and Rohrer, that corner.
Okay. So it was so that's county dispatch. When you call 911, county dispatch, and we encourage folks in the township to call 911. There's sometimes a fear like that. They're bothering the police. This is a minor incident. I don't want to call 911. I want to go with 836-1600, but the old phone. But call 911 and county dispatch, as they did in this case, notified an officer to respond. What do we know? What the outcome? Yeah, and that's what happens.
And he went by a couple times apparently, but at that corner, one of the residents parks their car literally in the corner, the outside portion of the corner. So now you effectively have one travel lane to move on. Then on the corner, there's a telephone pole and vegetation growing between that and an abandoned telephone pole. So you can't even see when you're going around the turn until you're practically completed your turn around it. And then you have kids they're not much higher than this, riding, and they're coming around the turn and stuff. It's just a recipe for trouble. So.
Is it around the same time generally?
No, it's just random. I mean, but I've seen groups come up, they're doing wheelies because they like to go up the hill and all that. And so, I mean, I was a kid, my family's lived here 4 generations. We all had fun and did things, but it's different now. I mean, we didn't have those types of, motorized vehicles at that age that you could be going 30 plus miles an hour on. So.
Right. Well, we can alert our officers to check that area from time to time. And
yeah, I mean, I see people every day or two doing it. So.
Okay. Put that on.
Do the kids live on your street?
No, I don't know who they are.
Okay. All right, yeah. We'll add it to our patrol road, but like saying earlier, how we're on East Mill right now, that can be an area that we'll come by and check. There's a certain time of day that it happens more than others.
Well, I'm sure it'll be changing now that school.
Through the summer.
So,
Okay.
but this was in the middle of the day. And normally it would probably be after school hours.
Okay.
Or weekends.
Me or Pat will be through the areas. And that's another thing I didn't mention is you won't always see me or Pat because we do have an unmarked vehicle. So usually it's Ford Explorer. That's just a police thing. But if you don't feel like anybody came, you feel free to call back and let us know. And we do. So as the chief mentioned, calling 911, it sets a log for us that you called and an officer responded, because then it comes down to my computer in my car, and I don't just ignore that. That's, I have to go to that call. So it starts a log, and then if there's a constant problem where an officer's showing up and not finding something, we can also look at that and say, okay, we need to go here at this time. It logs everything, so it gives us a better understanding of what's happening. So don't hesitate to call 911.
Just a quick follow-up on the e-bikes. I've seen in Philadelphia, for example, that folks are zooming in the bike lanes with not the bikes, but the scooters. And do they have different rules, or are they just turning a blind eye, if you will, to that type of behavior in the city?
So I don't know the full answer to that, because each, like, as we have our ordinance here for that, this PA microbility fact sheet is PA. So I would assume that they would have to fall under that. But then again, I don't know how their laws are set for, well, they're not a township, they're a city. Yeah, they're a city. So.
Yeah, and a county.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Just to add on, the bike situation, and I don't want to be the fun police, no pun intended, but I've seen my share of real close calls at Marlowe Field. Some of those bikes coming off the grass, perpendicular to traffic, it's a little scary. So I do appreciate you're taking that seriously. Lieutenant Mirsky, you mentioned, I don't know if it was the last forum or a different forum, about the number of calls the department gets, 20,000. Was that?
Approximately. We fielded around 20,000 calls for service last year.
Okay, so 20,000, that's a lot. It's just an appreciation of how many calls our department has to deal with, anywhere from minor to very serious, right? So at any time, there's 4 or 5 patrol officers on, including some hours where the traffic is on. So they have a full book of business. The other question I had was, can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if it's the philosophy or just practice of warnings versus actually issuing citations?
So it's an officer discretion. Again, I'm a parent. Most of us are parents. When we see something egregious, I believe a citation is warranted. Most of the guys and girls, I'm sorry, we're fair with our public, because we don't want to be, like I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be those hammers out there and, giving somebody a $250 ticket for going 10 miles over the speed limit. What did we accomplish there? We ticked off a neighbor because they got caught speeding when they've been complaining about the other person speeding, right? So we'd like to give warnings. The way I always looked at it is, again, it comes down to, as I said to this gentleman, we get a dispatch call. So when I stop a vehicle, I let the county know I'm out with that vehicle. It starts a record. I run a tag. That tag can show me all previous stops within the last year. So if I stop a vehicle and it's Joe Smith from Cromwell Ave and he's been stopped 6 times for running the red light, it's time for Joe to get a ticket, right? However, we do like to be fair. So if I stop Joe for the first time and I just meet him and he just moved to our township, the last thing I really want to do is give him a $250 ticket for running that stop sign. Hey, Joe, got to watch that stop sign. I know you moved from the city. That's where I grew up, South Philly Roll. We got to come to a full stop. We got too many kids around here, so on and so forth. So I think a lot of the officers take that into consideration. I know I worked with these guys for 10 years and I know they all have compassion with it. They're not about just making, like we said, we get $7 off the ticket. So it's nothing to do with money, but that's how I base my stops. And that record does help us. You can be stopped for not having your headlights on, get a warning. Then the next day you get stopped for a stop sign. You can still get a warning. But if 2 weeks from now you get stopped for running the stop sign without your headlights on, you're probably getting a ticket. So that's kind of how I base it. I believe most of the other officers base it the same as well.
Just to follow up on that general topic, and it's come up at the township level. Obviously, a lot this topic is being billed here because this is probably the topic that we get the most emails and inquiries about at the commissioner level, probably at staff level, also at your level, and it literally is your job. The recurring theme is, hey, we're a drive-through community. This is a place where people want to get from point A to point B through, and therefore they're speeding a lot. Can't we do something about that? Should we be a place that hammers folks with tickets? that type of conversation has happened. Do you have thoughts on either the concept of this idea that we're a uniquely positioned community that a lot of people speed through? Do you have, obviously, I think you've heard that you don't want to hammer folks with tickets, and that's important to know. Do you have any thoughts on this general idea that we're in a unique position to receive this type of activity?
So we're definitely a pass-through township with folks. We have 309 and some major arteries that go through our township. Just kind of elaborating on what Officer Gross was saying, the citations versus the warnings. If we do see something egregious where somebody is doing double the speed limit, for example, that individual, we're going to stop them. And that individual is most likely going to receive a citation. But it doesn't necessarily stop there. We also try to take it a step further where if the individual pleads not guilty to that, we can speak to that person at court and recommend some defensive driving courses and things like that. And that's been pretty successful, actually. And in exchange for successful completion of those courses to make that individual a safer driver, we would agree to withdraw the citation, for example, or plead that down to a lower type of fine. And I think that's been pretty successful with some of the issues we've had in the township. Does that answer your question?
I just wanted you to speak to this idea that maybe we have to live with some speeding because people are speeding. And I'm not sure that that's unique to us. It could be in your field. I just don't know. My guess is people are just speeding more. I think I've seen studies to that.
We do have speeding happens everywhere in the United States. The one kind of defense to being a pass-through town is there's traffic. So it's tough for folks to be doing, X amount over the speed limit. So we do have that kind of working to our advantage, but we are out there. We know when the busy hours, the rush hours are, and we're making sure we're out there and everybody's driving safe.
And before I pass this on, you alluded to it earlier, but could you clarify the 35 miles per hour that you can do in a 25 mile per hour zone, and that can be perceived as super fast in a neighborhood? Could you explain why that someone can drive up to 35 miles per hour?
So in the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code, a municipal police officer can stop a vehicle once that vehicle has exceeded that 10-mile-per-hour threshold. So if you're doing 26 miles per hour, 27 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone, there's too much of a margin of error when you're doing some sort of speed timing device to effectively initiate a stop. Does that make sense?
Can I add to that? Go ahead.
I was just wondering about the effectiveness of those things you see mounted on a pole that says the speed limit is 25, you're doing 35. Is that kind of a thing effective in reminding people and slowing me down?
Well, can I ask you, do you slow down when you say it?
I try to be very mindful of the speed limit all the time.
You don't try to get the top score on the flasher?
No.
So I believe they do help. I just posted one on East Mill and I started running speed there. So I do see the cars come up and they'll see it flash and they slow down, and we can set them to flash at certain limits. So we set them to flash at a low limit. So they flash before that vehicle hits that 35 mile an hour threshold where we actually can stop them. And I've been behind plenty of vehicles in my personal vehicle. I know when I see them, hey, does that have a camera in there? Does it get my tag? I'm slowing down. As you mentioned, Roosevelt Boulevard, I refuse to even go a mile over the speed limit on Roosevelt because I once got a ticket there. So I do find them to be effective. I really do. And we do move them. We have 4 of them, one stationary at Willow Grove and Traymore, and the other 3 move around the township at different times of the month. Sometimes if we have a lot of complaints on one road, we'll put it up. Summertime, I have one on 300 Orland Mill Road now. So they move around a lot, and I do find them to be effective.
Would it be of any use to have more that are permanently mounted?
So we've looked into those. They are expensive. The permanently mounted ones, they come with a cost. A lot of solar power ones, they're $6,000-$7,000 range. We have guys in work trucks who knock them off the telephone poles. So we're finding that the amount that we have right now, moving them around to the different areas, is what we can manage at this time.
They could also be sensitive.
Oh, I was just going to
Yes.
say, just to follow up, we get a report at the commissioner level on where those go every month, just so that we can kind of get an idea of where it's headed, because we understand, and I think a bunch of the commissioners wanted to say that it is actually helpful to have them move around, because otherwise folks get desensitized to what they're used to. Similar to crosswalks, where people say, hey, this crosswalk's been here for a long time, why won't people slow down? I think the science and the data would say it's because people get accustomed to the layout, and then to your point, like the neighbor who or Eden Road, when you put a stop sign in, oh, I wasn't ready for that. It's because you were so used to just going right through there. It happens the other way, and so just an extension of that, I've been told, anyways, that moving them around helps actually slow traffic down, and it's better than having a permanent one, so that people are prepared to slow.
Yeah, I just want to make I don't know if it's a question or just a comment on the 35 versus 25 thing, which I know to be true and knew that in terms of what's allowable to be enforced. My comment is just that not every 25-mile-an-hour street is the same, right? There are some streets where they're tight, the visibility's low. If you are going 35, it does seem like someone's going really fast and dangerous. And I don't know the answer to that, because legally you can't ticket. There's other traffic calming measures that can be done. There's unintended consequences. But I appreciate that you have to deal with, and we have, as a township, have to deal with the balance between making things uber safe and allowing traffic to flow freely. Because we could put a stop sign everywhere, slow traffic everywhere, and then everyone's just backed up all the time. So it is a balance. So appreciate that.
Well, remember that too. If you add the stop signs, they pick up their speed afterwards as well. So that's where we just have to be careful and have that balance.
And I guess on that topic of stop signs and traffic calming, and I think there's a common misconception out there that you can, well, if people are speeding a lot, put a stop sign. That doesn't warrant a stop sign. But there may be, like you said, other traffic calming measures. Can you speak to that as to why, and you kind of just touched on it, but as to why a stop sign's maybe not the right solution when you have an issue like that, but what are possibly some of the other, you started to talk about some of it in terms of, letting people park on both sides of the street. What are some other things that can be done when there is an issue, that doesn't necessarily warrant a stop sign?
Well, yeah, that's one. The speed devices that we mount on the poles are one. Us doing traffic enforcement out there, again, as we're doing on East Mill Road right now, our visibility. We do run into a lot of that where homeowners' bushes are overgrown out onto the street, and there's, again, township codes on all that type of stuff that we also, I didn't mention, we go out and we enforce in the traffic unit. And if people cut back their bushes and they can see, we're not like, let's take East Mill and Church for answer. You're pulling out there, you really kind of got to get out there first. But if we get the neighbor to cut all their stuff back, that stop sign does become useful and it works. But putting one in the middle of the roadway is where we run into problems. So we just do our traffic studies, see where it's enforceable. Then we spend our man hours out there. We could do anywhere from 10 to 20 man hours a week on one location. And that kind of gets, like I said, we start with the warning process. Been on East Mill Road, now I'm starting to cite. But the people that are driving by me on East Mill know I'm there now. So that's a calming measure in itself, because they're like, oh, wait, is the cop sitting over there? And then they see the sign flashing as well. So it does. But like within a week or two, I have to move that sign, because then people do get desensitized to it. And then they don't see me there as much. And then they go, oh, I can speed here again. So it's just constant circle of doing this, kind of the same thing over and over again in the areas that we have the problem.
Do we have any more questions on this or any other topics? Sure.
Citation. I have two questions on the Miller's Law. If I can find that citation. So regarding comment earlier that Miller's Law allows operating a phone if pulled over the side of the road. I'm looking at something from the township newsletter. I want to make sure I understand this right. Defines driving as operating a motor vehicle on a highway, including any time a motor vehicle is temporarily stationary because of traffic, a traffic control device, example, a traffic light or stop sign, or other momentary delay. So if I'm pulled over the side of the road, is that a momentary delay that constitutes not an exception?
So they're momentary delays while you're within the traffic light.
Within the traffic law. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
That
Okay.
perfectly clarifies it. Thank you. Next question. Says defines the use of an interactive mobile device, et cetera, by pressing more than a single button. My phone, I answer by swiping. Is that the same? Is a swipe okay? It's not a button press.
Right. It would be the same thing. You're making a single swiping motion to answer your phone.
Yes.
That makes sense. But it's hands-free.
It's laying there.
Yep.
It's,
Yep.
and it's tethered.
When you're on the phone call itself,
Yes.
your device is not in your hand.
Not in my hand.
Correct.
It's laying there and I got it tethered to something and it's not in my hand.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Third question. On Willow Grove Avenue, there's a section of no parking. And if you are at the locals coffee and at the end of their parking lot, and then forward from that on the same side, there's like, I'm going to say 4 or 5 parking spaces worth of no parking. That no parking sign between the two signs looks relatively new. Do you know why that was made no parking? Because there's not a lot of spaces around there
So
as it is.
the reason for that was visibility. So when people were coming out of locals drive-through, they
Okay.
could not see making a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn out of there due to those vehicles being parked there.
Okay.
So we put hash mark on the corner, which is a traffic control device for no parking.
Mhm.
And then moving forward, there's no parking signs from here down. And then we did another section to improve that visibility. Because luckily, this goes back to the question from earlier, what are we doing to prevent something before something bad happens?
All right.
That's what we did.
I just saw it from the perspective of, gosh darn it, parking is, you know,
Yeah, it's
at a premium anyway.
Coffee and
But,
yeah.
but I understand now the good reason. Thank
Yep.
you.
Do you have any other questions before I hand this back to our moderator? Right.
Yeah, I got another one. And this kind of goes to the second point that you made about what counts as a touch and what not. What about things like, does that law restrict what anybody can do? Because I know you talked about how, for example, you can't type in an address, but you can still, with CarPlay, for example, be doing a lot, change the playlist, change the app that shows up. Are there any restrictions on that within Miller's Law in terms of what you can be doing with, the built-in screen on your car?
Well, that's what it comes down to. It's supposed to be a hands-free device, right? So we still
But a lot
are
of times
using
it's
our
not,
hands
yeah.
by reaching over and touching. I know in my CarPlay, like if I go to Apple Music, I can only play what's up there. It won't let me search while I'm driving. So I can't type in, I want to hear whatever, the Beatles. I have to play what I have there, or I can have a set playlist that automatically plays. So it comes down to, again, watching folks' driving habits. And if they're going through and I'm seeing a bunch of this when they drive past me, then I'm stopping them for that law because that law states that it's supposed to be a hands-free device. That doesn't mean that became okay to use while you're driving.
Yeah, and that was my question, is whether, does the law even apply to, the built-in screen on your car? It sounds like the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I believe it does. And what I do is, again, with the warnings that I give on this, I ask people to go educate themselves on the law. We had some cards, we ran out of those, giving those out because it was a year. But we want you to educate yourself on the law. And usually when I bring up what that is, what caused that was the child, not a child, but a kid who got hit by another truck driver who was using his device. People would it clicks in their mind, okay, maybe I should look this up and see what it's about. Not to bring any like heartache or try to make it but that's what the law is for. That's what this parent fought for years. So, and we're all guilty of touching our phones while we drive. I mean, it's just become such a natural thing for us that now we have to get out of that habit of touching all this stuff. Like put the music on and just drive. You can do that all day long. Yeah, it depends on how, deep you're going in there. So it's just an itch, one thing, but got it.
Asking for a friend.
There you go.
All right, is that it for questions? I think so. It's a good spot to wrap up. So just want to say thank you to members of the public who came, and certainly a big thank you to our police department for your continued work and willingness to educate and engage with the community in this way. So thank you very much. Yeah. See you at the next one. Yes. September. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.